Introduction Shani Series Part 2. Welcome to Part 2 of the Shani series. Before we begin, let us briefly review a few essential concepts from the first part so that everyone starts from the same foundation. Shani, also known as Saturn, is the ultimate karmic administrator in Vedic astrology. No individual can escape the operation of Saturn because Shani delivers the results of actions performed in both this life and previous births. However, Saturn is not merely a planet of punishment. The intensity of Saturn's results is softened or intensified based on a native's discipline, responsibility, ethical conduct, and patience. Saturn rewards maturity just as much as it corrects negligence. Basic structure of Vedic astrology. Vedic astrology is based on a 360-degree zodiac belt, which includes 27 star constellations, also called nakshatras. This zodiac is further divided into 12 signs, known as rashis. These signs are Aries, Mesha, Taurus, Vrishabha, Gemini, Mithuna, Cancer, Karka, Leo, Simha, Virgo, Kanya, Libra, Tula, Scorpio, Vrishchika, Sagittarius, Dhanu, Capricorn, Makara, Aquarius, Kumbha, and Pisces, Meena. At the exact time of birth, the sign rising on the eastern horizon becomes the Lagna, also called the ascendant or the first house. From this Lagna, the remaining houses are counted sequentially up to the 12th house. Each house represents a specific area of life such as health, career, relationships, wealth, and spirituality. The planets present in the sky at the time of birth are placed into these houses based on their exact degrees within the zodiac. Each house spans approximately 30 degrees. Rahu and Ketu are not physical planets. They are mathematical points that represent where the moon's orbital plane intersects the Earth's orbital plane. These points are responsible for eclipses and play a very important karmic role in astrology. How a birth chart is analyzed. A birth chart is analyzed using several factors. These include house ownership, planetary placement, and planetary aspects. All planets aspect the seventh house from their position. In addition, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn have special aspects. Saturn aspects the third house, seventh house, and 10th house from its position. Planets are also classified as natural benefics or natural malefics. The Sun, Mars, Saturn, Rahu, and Ketu are natural malefic planets. Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and the Moon are natural benefic planets. However, a planet's actual behavior in a chart depends on whether it becomes a functional benefic or functional malefic, which is determined by the houses it owns from the Lagna. Predictions are not based on placement alone. They depend on three core factors: the functional nature of the planet, its dignity, such as exaltation, own sign, or debilitation, and its strength, primarily measured using Shadbala. Timing of events, dasha, bhukti, and transits. Vedic astrology also uses a precise timing system called the dasha and bhukti system. This system determines when karmic results will manifest. The dasha shows the main planetary period, and the bhukti shows the sub-period operating within it. Planetary transits, also called gochara, determine how strongly those results are experienced at a given time. In simple terms, the dasha and bhukti show when an event can occur, while transits show how intensely it will be felt. Planets also create yogas, which are favorable combinations, and doshas, which are challenging combinations. These are activated during appropriate dasha periods and reinforced or reduced by transits. Scope and purpose of this chapter. Vedic astrology is a vast and complex system with many interacting factors, often requiring expert-level synthesis. However, we follow a simple guiding principle: knowing something is better than knowing nothing. The remedies suggested in Vedic astrology, called pariharas, are corrective and supportive in nature and do not carry the risks associated with incorrect treatment, in fields such as medicine. This chapter is designed for two types of viewers. First, basic users who want to understand Saturn's transits, what to be mindful of, and which general remedies to follow. Second, advanced users who can use the detailed tables provided to validate their own charts and refine remedies more precisely. With this foundation in place, we now proceed deeper into Saturn's position, placement, transits, and their effects. Chapter 2: Details on Saturn, Lordship, Placement, Aspects, and Conjunction with other planets. This chapter introduces the effects of Saturn on a native based on Saturn's house ownership, placement, aspects, and conjunctions. By understanding where Saturn is placed in your birth chart, you can gain a clearer idea of how these factors influence different areas of life. In Part 3, we will discuss Saturn's transits, including Sade Sati and other challenging Gochara periods, along with critical placements of Saturn and a detailed section on practical remedies. This slide talks about special houses of Shani. Shani is exalted in Libra, Tula, where its qualities of discipline, justice, responsibility, and long term balance function at their highest and most constructive level, often giving authority, fairness, and sustained success after effort. Saturn is debilitated in Aries, Mesha, a sign of impulsiveness and haste, which conflicts with Saturn's slow, methodical nature, resulting in delays, frustration, and lessons through restraint unless debilitation is cancelled. Saturn owns Capricorn, Makara, and Aquarius, Kumbha. In Capricorn, Saturn expresses practical discipline, endurance, and material responsibility, while in Aquarius, it manifests as structured ideals, social responsibility, and service to collective causes. Saturn's Mula Trikona lies in Aquarius, making this sign especially important for Saturn's core agenda, where its results are most reliable, principled, and karmically focused. Placement of Saturn in exaltation, own sign, or Mula Trikona strengthens its ability to deliver stable, lasting results according to its functional role in the chart, while debilitation weakens its expression and increases struggle, delay, and the need for conscious discipline to achieve growth. And you must, to most extent, correlate this with Shani transit on these bad houses. Cancellations, strength, and your lagna, and all will either would have enhanced or mitigate the overall impact. Here are some additional important details about Shani, including Saturn's planetary friendships and enmities. When Saturn is placed in the sign of an enemy planet, it becomes uncomfortable and restricted, and its results are usually delivered with greater struggle. We also highlight the nakshatras ruled by Saturn, where its placement is generally considered more supportive and stable. We also explain why Shani is widely feared. As discussed earlier, Saturn compels individuals to face the results of past life karmas beyond their control, as well as the consequences of current actions, which is why discipline and right conduct become essential in mitigating Saturn's severity. Being the farthest visible planet from the Sun, Saturn takes approximately 30 years to complete one full cycle through the 12 rashis, spending about 2.5 years in each sign. Because Saturn's transits are long lasting, the effects it produces, whether constructive or challenging, are often deep and life altering. Out of the 12 houses from the moon sign, Saturn's transit through five specific positions, the first, second, fourth, eighth, and 12th, is traditionally considered difficult. As a result, nearly 12 to 13 years within every 30-year Saturn cycle tend to carry heavier karmic pressure, and most people can clearly identify these periods in their lives as times of significant challenge or transformation. In this slide, we explain Saturn's lordship of houses for different ascendants and determine whether Saturn functions as a functional benefic, functional malefic, or a planet giving mixed results for each lagna. Please remember that Saturn always owns Capricorn, Makara, and Aquarius, Kumbha. Depending on where these two signs fall in a chart, Saturn's functional nature changes. In the following slides, we explain why Saturn becomes benefic or malefic based on whether it owns Kendra houses, Trikona houses, or challenging houses known as Dosthanas. In the next slide, we apply the same logic, but instead of using the ascendant, we determine Saturn's nature and its effects from the moon sign, which represents the mind and emotional experience. This moon based analysis helps us understand how Saturn is felt psychologically, especially during Saturn transits and Sade Sati, even though final life events are always judged from the ascendant. In this slide, we explain how to determine Saturn's functional nature step by step. In simple terms, if Saturn owns one Kendra house and one Trikona house, it becomes a Yoga Karaka and functions as a strong benefic. If Saturn owns Dusthana houses, such as the 6th, 8th, or 12th, or has a strong connection to Maraka houses, it functions as a malefic. If Saturn owns one favorable house and one challenging house, it is considered mixed, giving both supportive and difficult results depending on its strength, placement, and timing. There is a long standing classical question in Vedic astrology regarding whether houses and planetary effects should be judged from the Lagna, ascendant, or from the moon sign, also called Chandra Lagna. In practice, both are important, but they serve different purposes. The Rashi chart, which we primarily use in this video, shows planets placed in signs, while the Bhava chart refines how those planets operate in houses. The distinction between these two will be discussed in more detail in the basic astrology class. The Chandra Lagna, or moon sign, represents the mind, emotions, and psychological experience of events. It explains how a native feels the effects of planetary periods and transits, which is why Saturn transits such as Sade Sati and Ashtama Shani are always judged from the moon. The Surya Lagna, or sun sign, represents identity, vitality, authority, and purpose, and is mainly useful for understanding confidence, leadership, and dharmic expression, but it is secondary for event based predictions. When there is a conflict between interpretations from Lagna and Moon, the Lagna must always take priority for determining actual life events, because it represents the physical body and external reality. In a chart with Taurus Lagna, Saturn becomes a Yoga Karaka by owning the ninth and 10th houses and can give career growth and stability. However, if the Moon is placed in Leo, Saturn owns the 6th and 7th houses from the Moon and may feel stressful or challenging mentally. In such cases, Saturn's results will still manifest positively in life, as promised by the Lagna, but the emotional experience of those results may feel heavy or demanding. This is why Lagna decides what happens, while the Moon explains how it is experienced. In Libra, where discipline and justice operate in balance, it is strong in its own signs, Capricorn and Aquarius, where its traits function steadily and constructively. Saturn is debilitated in Aries, where impulsiveness conflicts with its slow, methodical nature. Dignity determines the quality and ease of Saturn's expression, not whether its results are good or bad. Strength, measured mainly through Shadbala, determines how powerfully Saturn delivers results. A Saturn with high Shadbala produces clear, forceful outcomes, while a weak Saturn gives delayed or inconsistent results. Strength amplifies Saturn's functional role. A strong benefic Saturn gives strong support, and a strong malefic Saturn gives strong pressure. Dignity shows how Saturn functions, and Shadbala shows how strongly those functions manifest. A functional malefic Saturn does not affect every area of life equally. Its influence is mainly limited to the houses it owns: Capricorn and Aquarius from the Lagna, the house it occupies, the houses it aspects through its third, seventh, and 10th aspects, and the houses activated during Saturn major or sub periods. Saturn also affects specific houses from the moon sign, which explains where pressure, delay, discipline, or responsibility is actually experienced. However, during Saturn transits that strongly affect the moon, such as Sade Sati, Ardha Ashtama Shani, Saturn transiting the fourth house from the moon, and Ashtama Shani, Saturn transiting the eighth house from the moon, the mind itself comes under Saturn's influence. This often creates low enthusiasm and the feeling that nothing is working, even though only certain life areas are truly under pressure. This psychological effect is why Saturn can feel overwhelming at times. More detailed explanations of Sade Sati and its phases will be covered in part 3 of this series. In Vedic astrology, Saturn has special aspects in addition to the standard 7th house aspect shared by all planets. Saturn aspects the 3rd, 7th, and 10th houses from its position. Wherever Saturn casts its aspect, it brings discipline, delay, responsibility, and karmic accountability related to the matters of that house. These aspects do not necessarily deny results, but they slow down progress and require sustained effort, patience, and maturity. The table shown here summarizes the effects of Saturn's aspects on each house, explaining how Saturn's influence manifests when it aspects different areas of life. By referring to this table, one can understand which life themes come under Saturn's testing and restructuring, and how those areas mature over time through endurance and consistent effort. Saturn placement in signs and houses. The tables in this slide and the next show the effects of Saturn's placement in different rashis, signs, and bhavas, houses. These summaries are meant as reference guides, since a full explanation of Saturn's placement in every sign and house would require extensive study. The tables help identify general patterns and tendencies, which can then be refined further using the complete birth chart. Saturn in Aries and Nichabanga. This slide focuses specifically on Saturn placed in Aries, its debilitation sign, across all lagnas. Because Aries will fall in a different house for each lagna, the effects of Saturn's debilitation vary by bhava. For example, for an Aries lagna, Saturn in Aries occupies the first house and primarily affects the self, body, and overall life direction. In certain conditions, such as supportive placement of Mars, the ruler of Aries, or benefic aspects from planets like Jupiter, the negative effects of debilitation can be reduced or cancelled. This cancellation is known as Nicha Bhanga. Saturn in Upāya houses and special cases. In the upcoming slides, we also examine Saturn placed in Upāya houses, which are growth-oriented houses. Special attention is given to cases where these Upāya houses fall in Aries, and the conditions required for Nicha Bhanga in such situations. These sections are primarily intended for reference and deeper study, especially for viewers interested in refining their understanding of Saturn's long-term growth effects. We also discuss certain special placements of Saturn, such as Pushkara Navamsha, Mrityu Bhaga, Mrityu Amsa, and Gandhantha, along with their typical effects in the slides that follow. Saturn's conjunction or close placement with other planets significantly modifies how its karmic results are delivered. The effects of Saturn combined with its friends, neutrals, or enemies differ greatly, and the final outcome also depends on the house of placement, planetary strength, and the overall chart context. Because the number of possible combinations across all planets and houses is very large, a complete treatment of Saturn's conjunctions requires detailed, case-by-case analysis. In this slide, we have therefore limited the discussion to a few key and commonly observed Saturn conjunctions that have strong practical relevance. These examples provide a general understanding of how Saturn behaves when combined with other planets, while more precise interpretation should always consider the full chart, planetary dignity, and timing factors such as dasha and transits. In part 3 of this series, we will discuss some key yogas formed by Saturn, along with Saturn's transits, including the widely known Sade Sati cycle of 7.5 years, as well as Ashtama Shani and Ardha Ashtama Shani. We will conclude the series with a discussion on special placements of Saturn and how they can either challenge or support a native, followed by a comprehensive remedies section that includes effective Shani shlokas, bija mantras for silent chanting, and other practical guidance. Thank you for listening patiently to our presentation so far.